just starting the recording here.
Okay.
All right. Well, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining Dustin and I tonight on the gluten. Is it causing you weight loss resistance? And Dustin and I were just mentioning, those who are already on the line, that this has been a popular topic and we've got a lot of people signed up, so we're really excited to share this information with you tonight. And I was talking to Dustin about what he wanted me to discuss after doing a Nutrition 101 earlier later last year, I guess, now that we're in 2014, and he picked this topic. So I thought I'd maybe let him share a little bit about why he thought it would be good and what his experience with gluten is.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's kind of interesting that we're having this on a webinar right now, because we had it planned to be live at the Transformation Center right now with probably 100 plus people, but Mother Nature had other plans, so it's great to be able to offer this to people who are outside of Madison. So kind of in a way, it's good. I love to do live events and stuff like that. Something special about them. So like Tracy said, we had a lot of different options on things that Tracy can talk about, her expertise, and the gluten thing really stuck out to me. You know, it's kind of, whether you want to call it a fad or not, it's become a buzzword the last year or two. You know, gluten-free options are popping up everywhere. Mainstream's kind of going on the gluten-free craze, and you know, it's really important to understand, like, what is gluten, and do you have, you know, maybe does your body handle it well or doesn't it, and what it really means to you. I've personally, you know, I've shared a little bit about this in the past. I've kind of gone paleo the last couple of years. By no means hardcore. I do dairy still, and I'll go out to eat. I'll eat bread. So it's certainly not 100%, but what I have noticed by basically getting rid of gluten, because paleo is pretty much gluten-free, is that I'm way less bloated, and it's easier for me to manage my weight. And yeah, those are the biggest two things for me personally. I just don't feel bloated after a meal, and my weight has been able to stay much more manageable. I don't have to try quite so hard as when I was eating a lot more gluten and a lot more kind of breads and pastas. So I think this is a great topic tonight. I've seen a lot of my clients be completely transformed by either, you know, maybe reducing gluten or eliminating it, and there's a lot of simple ways to do that too. So I have blabbed on long enough, so I'm going to mute myself and let the expert take over, and she's going to share with you some incredible information, and then giving you at the end tonight an incredible offer that you definitely want to stay to the end, and then I'll kind of close things up here at the end. So have an awesome evening with Tracy, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Well, thank you, Dustin, and just want to say thanks everyone for being here. I know we're still seeing some people come in here a little bit after the hour, and welcome. And one thing I want to mention too right off the bat is I'm used to doing live seminars, and I love to do live seminars. So webinars are always a little challenging because I feel like I'm talking to myself the whole night. So what would be great is if in your question screen or chat screen, whatever it's on your side, when I ask you questions, if you want to give feedback or ask questions there, it's really helpful to kind of keep this engaging, and because I don't want to lose anybody. So that's going to be really helpful to me if we can keep this a little bit more interactive. So really excited that you guys are all here, and we are going to get going. Just want to double check in the question screen. Let's practice in the question screen. Can everybody hear me? And are you ready to learn more about gluten, and is it causing you weight loss resistance? Yes, I see some yeses. So lots of yeses. Absolutely. You're ready. Awesome. So if you have any questions or want to partake in the conversation here, we are going to use that question screen only, and I'm going to be watching that throughout the presentation. So that's your way to engage and have fun. So Dustin shared a little bit with you how eating gluten or going less gluten or gluten-free has impacted his health. And I want to share with you a little bit before we get going. I wanted to put this disclaimer up here. I always like to do this, that that I'm not here to diagnose you or treat you or tell you you have a gluten sensitivity or celiac disease or anything, that this is just information for educational purposes only. So I just wanted to throw that into you really quick, and put that out there. But I, have been really passionate about this topic because of what I've seen, not only in my own life, but in my client's life. And just like Dustin shared his story, I would just want to share my story really quickly. And first of all, I want to show you this picture of myself. And some of you have seen me before, and some of you haven't. But what I notice the most about gluten is that the inflammatory response it can cause, and this is what cause in the body, and that's why I see it to be such a weight loss resistor. Is, like Dustin said, puffiness. Puffiness is huge, and I'm going to show you some pictures throughout the presentation. I'd struggled with my health and weight, and I kind of have a long story. It's all on my blog, for many years. But when I finally really eliminated and reduced gluten in my diet, I noticed huge changes in my weight, specifically my digestion and also my hormones. I had a lot of sex hormone imbalances, and I also had a lot of chronic constipation issues for years. So we're getting real right off the bat here. Talking about digestion, but I have tons of clients that come into me with IBS and constipation issues, and I've noticed how significantly reducing gluten in my diet has, transformed my own health. So I've been totally gluten-free for about 4 years, and then personally I added gluten back into my diet in specific ways, which I'll share with you later, and I'm able to digest that now, and I've really worked on healing my body over the years. But I know and I see it transforming my client's life, and especially their weight if they're in weight loss resistance. So that's why I care about this topic, and that's what I want to share, the information that I've learned over the years and helped hundreds of my clients with it. To have the same success as I did. So that's what we're going to be talking tonight, and I just wanted you to know that I have a lot of personal experience and and I've helped a lot of my clients in the same way. So that is my story, and for those of you, oops, I'm sorry here, who, and my thing will go up in just 1 second. I know sorry about that. An issue here. So we'll get back to that. All right. So what is gluten? That's what we're going to be here to, what we are going to be talking to you about tonight. So I want to start out with what the heck is gluten. And I know that it is a buzzword. Like Dustin said, it's a huge fad, or some of us are calling it a fad. Everyone's doing gluten-free, but what does it really matter? So I want to start by sharing, what actually is gluten. And gluten is a protein that's found in wheat and other grains such as barley, rye, spelt, that are all coming from a similar species of grain. And what gluten does is it gives elasticity and a chewy texture to bread, but also helps dough to rise. So people really have the tendency in this country to love that soft, chewy bread. So for over the years, we've actually increased the gluten content in our grain products, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. So it's a protein. I want you guys to remember that gluten is a protein in those grains. And I want to show you here on this slide, and this is a handout that you will be getting in a follow-up email tomorrow, a PDF handout. So don't feel like you have to write all these things down. You'll be getting this in a follow-up email. But what grains contain gluten? So barley, bran, couscous is a common one, rye, spelt, wheat. I kind of skipped, I was just naming off the ones that are very common. And oats in this country, unless they are specifically noted as being gluten-free, because of cross-contamination, typically are considered not gluten-free. Even though genetically they are, we have too many cross-contamination issues in this country. So those are all examples of common grains that contain gluten. And then on the other side here, we're going to see what are some gluten-free options. So I like to show this comparison because people look at this list and say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to eat anything again. So when we compare it to the other side, we're going to see things like beans, amaranth, arrowroot is a thickening powder that a lot of people use, corn, millet, nuts and nut flours, potatoes, quinoa, and rice are two typical grains that you are going to see in a lot of gluten-free products that we'll talk about later. Also, tapioca is going to be gluten-free and teff. So you can see that there's still some options in the grain category, but what we're going to be focusing on tonight is, what foods contain gluten, what they're doing to our body, and, what we can do about it. So there's a question about, so oatmeal contains gluten. If someone is really sensitive to gluten and the oats are not certified gluten-free, what that means is that if someone, say, had the celiac disease and they ate non-certified gluten-free oats, that there is a chance that they could have a reaction because of the high cross-contamination. I also had a question about soy here that I'll answer really quickly because I want to really stay on the gluten topic, that soy and other beans and legumes are gluten-free. I personally have come from the perspective of what a great-grandmother have and eat, and a lot of soy products, because of their estrogenic properties, can affect hormone balance and thyroid function. So I work with a lot of people that have hormone balances, digestive issues, and thyroid problems. And so I'm really, I only recommend soy and soy products in fermented forms like miso soup or tamari sauce and things like that. So tamari sauce I'll talk about later, how that's an example of something that is gluten-free, where regular soy sauce typically has gluten in it. So that's why I have soy. It is gluten-free, but is not something that I recommend consuming in large amounts. So that's a great question. So right now you're looking at what contains gluten, what's gluten-free, and like I said, you'll get this handout as a follow-up tomorrow. So I just want to kind of set the stage tonight for knowing that gluten is something, it's a protein, so we're always going to go back to it's a protein, and that it's in the grains that you're going to see in red. And those grains are in a lot of our foods in our food supply. So how does it cause a problem? Because like that, the fad that we're talking about is, everyone's talking about, well, gluten this, but if you think back about 5-10 years ago, we hardly heard anything about gluten. So how is this causing a problem in our bodies? And the thing I want you to remember is that protein can cause irritation in the GI tract. So that's our intestinal tract, and this irritation can lead to inflammation. And if we think about inflammation, do you guys typically think good or bad? Type in your question screen, inflammation, good or bad? Just so we can keep this a little bit interactive. I see a lot of bads. You guys are right on track, right? So bad, yep, we got it. So we don't want a lot of inflammation. And the irritation that gluten stickiness can cause leads to inflammation. And that inflammation in our GI tract can allow those proteins, which is what gluten is, and other proteins from our foods to enter our bloodstream. And our immune system looks at those proteins as foreign invaders and creates an immune reaction. And that's how we can it can start causing problems in the body. It's a very simplified explanation of that, but what I want you to remember is the stickiness can cause, because it's like the glue in the bread, it can cause that irritation, then inflammation happens, and then we can get an immune response, and it can cause a lot of other problems in our body. So that's one of the big ways that gluten can cause issues. And tonight we're talking specifically a little bit about weight loss resistance, but we're also just in general talking about how this impacts. But that puffiness that you saw in that first picture of me and that Dustin mentioned in his story is what I see in my clients all the time. And I just love showing like before and after pictures of people when they reduce gluten in their diet, because you can see the puffiness in their face. And you can see the water retention is a big thing that that my clients notice, and the bloating and things like that. So I thought these were two good pictures. You can see that pre-gluten-free and after 4 months, and just the changes in the face. And I love to share the story of one of my clients who came to me, and she was having a fatigue and digestive issues and on and on and on. And we decided, I said, you know, a lot of your stuff is pointing to having a gluten issue. Let's remove it from your diet for 2 weeks. And she did that, and oh my gosh, she walked into my office and I couldn't believe my eyes. She said for, you know, my whole life I've had these circles under my eyes, and she was only in her early 20s, and this puffiness about her, and it was completely gone. But then Thanksgiving rolled around. Thanksgiving came, and what does everybody like to eat at Thanksgiving? Their grandma's homemade stuffing. So she said she came in a couple of days after Thanksgiving, and right away before she even said anything, I'm like, you started eating gluten again, because that puffiness and inflammation came back so quickly. It was crazy. So I think that it's really interesting how that this specific food can really cause that irritation, that inflammation, and I guess that overall puffiness that I see in a lot of people's faces, especially and around the eyes and things like that. So we're going to talk about some other symptoms that you can get from that. But someone asked, was gluten the only thing that they changed? For a lot of my clients, that, you know, eating real food is one thing they change, like great-grandmother foods that I teach people how to do, but I see significant changes in inflammation, specifically in puffiness, with gluten alone. So I wanted to mention that, that gluten alone can really be the cause of some of that. So I thought I'd share those pictures just to kind of show you that I see this really day in and day out, and it's pretty amazing. So that's where the whole connection between gluten, that irritation, that inflammation, and then bang, you can have problems with weight. But what's interesting is, I know our focus tonight is about weight, but also a lot of people with the bloating especially, they'll notice digestive symptoms when they associate problems with gluten. And I really want you guys to understand that not everybody experiences gluten sensitivity or gluten reactions in their gut first, meaning they're experiencing it in other ways. So some of my clients notice the puffiness in the face, the circles under their eyes go away. So I want you guys to put in your screen, just again to keep this interactive. What % of people do you think experience sensitivity issues in places other than their digestive tract first? Does that question make sense? Got some 25, 40, 50, 60, 80, 70, 75. So I'm getting it all over the board here. These are great guesses. So what's interesting about gluten is that 50% of people actually experience it in that puffiness, like I'm telling you. And then other symptoms like all of these. We're talking about the weight loss resistance, but the digestive stuff is bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, irritable bowel. It can cause problems with other foods like lactose. But fatigue, cravings, weakness, joint pain is a huge one. I get great results with people in decreasing joint pain. So that's something that can be really helpful to people to know as well. And I'm sorry here. Whoops. I'm getting problems with my GoToWebinar again. I am so sorry about this. I apologize. If you'll hold on one second, I'll pull that back up. says my computer is overloaded, so I think we've got a lot of people on here, so I appreciate your patience with the slides here. So these are another thing that I want to mention too is that joint pain, headaches, skin rashes, depression, so mood disorders. I have a lot of clients who remove gluten from their diet and all of a sudden their mood improves. And what's interesting about that, I'll talk in a second too about the gut connection, is that when we're depressed, are we typically making good food choices? So that's how it can lead to ADD, or excuse me, depression and other behavioral disorders because of this gut-brain connection that I'll go over in a second. I've also seen children and adult skin rashes completely clear up. I have many clients that had hand rashes, itchy stuff all over their hands. They gave up gluten and were able to see immediate changes in their skin, rashes and things like that. And then they would kind of test it and they would eat some and it would come back. There's also thyroid issues, especially Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition, which you'll see autoimmune issues on here, as well as allergies. That when people remove this stuff, that they can notice a big difference there. Now, one thing I want to mention is that you'll see failure to thrive. I know we're focusing on the other end of the spectrum tonight, that some people can't lose weight, but also it can be very destructive to people's intestinal tract, and some people can't gain weight. So there's that factor too. So we've got two factors. We've got the failure to thrive, where they can't gain weight. We also have the people that get puffy and have a lot of inflammation. Because of that. I just have a few questions here that I wanted to answer before we go forward here. One of them is how common is skin reactions with gluten sensitivity? I don't know if I have a certain percentage. It's a great question, but I would say there's a large amount that I see the correlation between it coming out in the skin, and even in children too. So another question Cindy had, is there a benefits to following a gluten-free diet for kids and adults with ADHD? And yes, I'm going to talk about the gut-brain connection very soon to answer that, but that's a great question. Is any other questions? And I noticed someone mentioned that I'm breaking up a little bit. Can everybody still hear me all right? Better. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, good. Autism, you know, autism is a great question. Autism, I've seen some of my clients that have autistic kids. I don't specifically work with a lot of children, so my experience in that area is a little bit limited, but the parents that I have worked with, I have seen some of them improve and some of them not improve. So it kind of seems that there is a connection for some children, but not everybody. So that's a great question. That's a great question. Does back pain fall into the joint pain category? Yes, back pain can definitely fall into the joint pain category. So those are more great questions. Okay. So we've got some symptoms, so I just wanted to go over those, and I know weight loss is a huge one for people, and I do see that. That's why I wanted to show you those pictures. And also that the girl that's standing kind of lifting up her shirt, looking down at her belly, that's another great example of how bloating can be. And some people get so used to their stomach sticking out and being bloated, they don't realize they're actually bloated. Because that's their normal, that's their everyday. But what I've noticed that clients say is, oh my gosh, my stomach gets flatter, and I feel so much better. Someone's asking about heirloom wheat. I'm going to be talking about that very soon. So I'm just going to look at a couple more questions here. Some long questions. So I'm gonna hopefully see if I answer some of the questions that were just put on the chat screen. If I don't at the end, please make sure that you let me know, and I will readdress those questions at the end when we have some time to go over what your thoughts and stuff are. So I'm going to keep going. So these are some symptoms. But I also want to talk about what's the difference between a sensitivity and celiac disease. Um, so celiac disease is when the sensitivity is affecting your intestines so much that you actually start an autoimmune attack that damages something called villi. And if you look at the screen, you're going to see the villi are actually those little fingers that are sticking up on the top picture, the purple and pink. And those villi are there to decide what's going to go into your bloodstream and what's not going to go into your bloodstream, what's going to be absorbed and what's not going to be. So when you have celiac disease, you can see from the second picture, there's so much inflammation and damage that's done, it can cause those villi to be destroyed. And then they're not working as well to determine what's going to come in and out of your bloodstream. And that's why we get a lot of health issues that are impacted with celiac disease. Another thing I want to mention is the average delay, it's an average delay of 11 years from symptom onset to diagnosis of celiac disease. So again, a lot of people experience symptoms of celiac disease without a diagnosis because it's that great imitator, as the other slide said. So for example, I had a friend from high school, and she was having all sorts of crazy health problems. She would eat celery and carrots, and her lips would blow up like balloons. And she started just getting sick all the time and having chronic sinus infections and just one infection after another, and just having a lot of problems with her health. And then digestively, she was starting to get more of the IBS symptoms. And she finally, after years, was diagnosed with celiac disease. She gave up gluten, and all of a sudden, all of her other symptoms went away. She can eat everything else that she was having to go to the emergency room for because she eliminated the food that was causing the inflammation in her digestive tract. So celiac is actually an autoimmune attack when you eat the proteins from gluten, causing inflammation and destroying your villi. Where food sensitivities is typically just inflammation in your gut that is not actually an autoimmune condition, but can cause reactions in your body, just like the symptoms that we talked about before. So the more that when my friend eats gluten now, because she has celiac, she gets extremely sick. Now when someone eats, like the other client I was sharing with you, and when she ate her grandma's stuffing, she wasn't at the hospital with incredibly bad pain. She was just noticing those symptoms come back, like the puffiness and things like that. So that's going to be the difference between those two things. I just have a quick question. Can other foods cause a similar reaction like your friend? Yeah, depending on the person and the inflammation they have going on in their digestive tract, I see reactions to all sorts of foods depending on the person. So it can definitely vary from person to person. But I just want to tell you the difference between being a celiac and having gluten sensitivity. Now tonight with weight loss resistance, yes, you can have celiac that's causing weight loss resistance, but also I just want to point that we are really talking more about gluten sensitivity tonight in weight loss resistance, because if I'm doing a presentation to celiacs, I need to be much more specific. But most of the people I work with don't have celiac, but they might have a slight gluten sensitivity. So it's a little bit different. Can gluten sensitivity cause acid reflux? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great question. And I have a lot of success with my clients, with permission from their doctors, if they get off gluten, are able to get off their reflux meds, and that have been on for a really, really long time. Not always the cause, but definitely something to think about, because if it's causing inflammation in your GI system, it's just up a little higher for some people. So I do commonly see acid reflux getting better with going gluten-free. So anyway, wanted to point out the difference between what is celiac disease and what is gluten sensitivity. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So we're going to keep moving forward here. So this is what I want you guys to use the chat screen. So before I tell you why I think that this is becoming such a huge problem. Like I said, think 10 years ago we didn't hear anything about gluten. Now you go to restaurants, there's gluten-free menus everywhere. Why do you think we are experiencing such an increase in gluten sensitivities and celiac disease and all these digestive issues? I'm seeing a lot of people saying processed foods. Yep. I also see wheat is in everything. I think you guys will agree if you start looking at your labels. I also see GMO, which stands for genetically modified organisms, and we'll be talking about that in just a few minutes. Pesticides, the quality of food in general, how it's grown, hybridization. Yes, we don't eat real food. So I love that you guys are giving feedback, and I completely agree, and we're going to talk through some of those things. But I think some other things will surprise you too. But the first thing that some of you mentioned was the fact that the processing and growing of grains is very different than it used to be. And what's interesting is that they're doing, I think, some experiments on genetically modified wheat. But wheat specifically in the United States and most places, I was reading an article that they did find some GMO wheat on I think the West Coast being grown where it wasn't supposed to. But most of it is actually changed, not through GMO, but through the hybrid process. And I want to share with you this specific type of grain. If we look back 1,000 years ago, or what I would call the great-grandmother wheat, it's something called einkorn, is the species of great-grandmother wheat. And if you look at this screen, you're going to see that einkorn is a diploid, which means that it has one set of chromosomes. You can read that right in the slide. But if you look at the common wheat today, through the process, you're looking at up to 42 different chromosomes. So there's a huge difference in both of those type of products. Would you guys agree? Huge difference. I'm getting a note that people can't hear me again. Can you guys confirm that you can hear me? You can. Okay. I'm not even. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you. Sorry for that. I just saw that on the chat screen. I wanted to make sure I wasn't talking to the airwaves. So there's a huge difference in the type of wheat, even if it's organic wheat, for example, than what great-grandmother's wheat from a long time ago was. So the einkorn is that original species. And when I said I've introduced small amounts of wheat back into my diet and doing just fine, what I've decided to do is reintroduce great-grandmother's type of wheat. And that is actually einkorn flour. So it's part of einkorn wheat, berries, flour, that sort of thing. It actually has a different protein content, so it doesn't spike your blood sugars like the common wheat varieties do. And it's a lot easier for people to digest. And I've read in places that some people that have celiac are even able to eat small amounts because this is where it's just more closer to nature. We didn't mess with it. So what I will, as a follow-up to the presentation tonight, you are going to be getting a PDF of information on einkorn flour and wheat, specifically where to buy it, how to get your hands on it, and just more information about the structure of it and the vitamin content. So that's going to be part of the follow-up email that you will be getting tomorrow. As a thank you for coming to the class, taking your time tonight. So, but basically, most grocery stores are not going to carry this. This is something that you typically are going to purchase online. And like I mentioned, I will be sure to give you the resources in email tomorrow. So very easy for you to follow that and learn more about einkorn flour. So again, one of the big reasons why is that it's not sweet anymore. The second, which a lot of you guessed, is that it's in everything. So when some of my clients go to say, hey, I'm going to go gluten-free, and I start looking at labels and they're like, oh my gosh, gluten, wheat's in everything. And does anybody know why gluten is in everything? Why do you think we see gluten in so many different products? You guys got it right across the board. It's a filler and it's cheap. We have a lot of it. It is a subsidized food from the government, so we've got a surplus. Cheap, 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 cheap. And you start noticing on labels that it's going to be in everything. So I wanted to share this, and again, this is going to be a part of your other handout that you get as a follow-up tomorrow. And these are some examples of places that gluten, besides, if you see wheat on the label, that gluten can sneak into your foods. So you see artificial colors. So when you see some of the dyes on some of the cereals or candies and that sort of thing, artificial colors are a common source of wheat-based syrups they're using in those. So artificial colors, beer. Some of my clients' biggest things about having to give up gluten is having to drink gluten-free beer because they don't like it. Anything that's breaded is typically going to be used gluten. Sometimes they, in broths and stocks, they use gluten to thicken it. If you see caramel color, in any of your foods, that can be a wheat-based. Citric acid can also be from wheat and corn and some other products, but unless they're specifically stating that citric acid can be wheat-derived. Coating mixes, coffee. They'll sometimes add wheat as a filler in instant coffees. Crab cakes, so you have to think about things like meatloaves and crab cakes that they're sticking together. In restaurants, typically they're going to use flour to do that. Croutons, now glucose syrup can be derived from a wheat base. Gravies, malts, malt vinegars, things like marinades, they can use wheat products, the meatballs, meatloaves, modified food starch. So in a lot of our processed foods, you'll see modified food starch, which can be a gluten derivative. Meat substitutes, so a lot of soy products come from gluten. Monosodium glutamate, which is a preservative that a lot of us here at MSG can again be derived from that and cause a lot of similar problems that people ingesting gluten experience. Processed meats. I've even seen them inject turkeys around Thanksgiving with gluten. It'll actually say gluten. They're injecting it because that makes them retain water, and then actually they weigh more. So isn't that interesting that you've got to, that's what they're using it. Just like if we eat too much, we're sensitive to it, we retain water and weigh more. Salad dressings, they can thicken it. I mean, you can kind of read through the list that you'll also be getting tomorrow, but it can sneak its way into many things. Now, soy sauce is something that is wheat-derived. Now, if you get tamari, you'll see tamari a little bit lower on your list. There's a lot of gluten-free tamari options, which is more a traditional form of soy sauce. So you can find tamari that is gluten-free. Wine coolers, that same friend I was telling you that has celiac disease, called me one night and she was pretty frantic and said, I just drank a wine cooler and didn't realize that it was malted and it had gluten in it. Is there anything that I can do about it? And it's kind of like once you ingest it, you ingest it. So you just have to be careful with some of that. Wine specifically by itself is typically gluten-free. But I just want to give you this quick list. Now, again, remember tonight we're talking to an audience, I'm talking to you as an audience more as gluten sensitivity versus a celiac. Someone who has celiac disease has to be extremely careful with this stuff. Someone that has a sensitivity, probably is not going to, if they have a little citric acid in their food, probably from a wheat base, probably wouldn't notice a difference. So again, we're talking about those two different levels. I'm going to answer a couple of questions here. Is cornstarch, let's see, does this include cornstarch or is it under the corn difference? Cornstarch typically, from what I know, is gluten-free because corn is gluten-free. But some others, depending on what they're using to make that starch in other ways, but cornstarch is typically going to be gluten-free. Um, let's see. Let me ask. Liquid Bragg's is soy sauce alternative. Does it contain gluten? That's a great question. I'm not, honestly, off the top of my head, not sure. Because I usually typically will use tamari sauce. So that could be something I'll write on my list here that I can follow up in the email tomorrow. Is textured vegetable protein, aka tofu? No. Textured vegetable protein is usually something they'll put in like vegetarian dishes, like box mixes and stuff like that. So tofu is soy. It is gluten-free, but it falls under that category of not something I recommend because it's not a fermented form of soy. So I'll write the liquid aminos and I'll check into that for you. So thanks for asking that question. A couple more questions I want to just get in this section. Another Bragg's question, so someone might have answered it for us. Someone said it is gluten-free. Ezekiel bread, that's a great question. Ezekiel bread is not gluten-free. Ezekiel bread is a sprouted grain bread. It does use wheat, I think wheat and spelt. That is not going to be a gluten-free solution. Great question. I can send you Sanjay, a gluten-free soy sauce. If it's not tamari, it's typically not gluten-free. So you're going to have to be looking for tamari versus soy sauce. Great question. It'll say gluten-free tamari on the label. That's something very specific. So any other questions in this section? This is a short list. There are more foods, but I just wanted to get you thinking. But what's interesting is if you follow the real food, eating real food that great-grandmother ate, you're not going to be consuming a lot of these products anyway. So you don't have to worry about it. And if you're reading your labels, you're going to, and following what I call the great-grandmother rule, did great-grandmother eat it? When you see words like modified food starch, that's new to the modern diet, or MSG. We're trying to reduce processed foods, and that's one of the great things about going gluten-free. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Let's see. I have just a couple more questions here. I'll get to some of these questions in a second. Okay. All right. So we're going to keep moving forward. So I wanted to point that out. So here's some other reasons I think that gluten is becoming a problem. So first of all, we went over that it's much different than great-grandmother's gluten. Secondly, we said it's in everything. So many of our foods that didn't have it has binders and fillers and things like that that contain wheat. And third, I think that we have our immune function is compromised by things like stress and toxins exposure. So as we continue to live in an environment that has more and more chemicals, and as we see more and more chemicals in our food, but also how much stress that people are under. And I wanted to point this out as a huge part of the conversation tonight, and it's called the gut-brain connection. I actually think of our gut as our second brain, and there's a connection between these two things, and I like what Dr. Robert has to say here, is digestion is quickly shut down during stress. The parasympathetic nervous system, perfect for all calm vegetative physiology that normally mediates the action of digestion. When along comes stress, you turn that off and you turn on the sympathetic nervous system, and digestion goes out the window. So basically what he's saying is that when we're not under stress, our digestive tract, we live out of parasympathetic, which is our nice calm. Our nerves aren't going. When stress comes along, we get into the sympathetic nervous system and our body shuts down digestion. So many of my clients that are struggling with digestive issues are also struggling with stress issues. And I've found that a lot of people that want to help improve their digestive tract need to also work on the stress in their lives. Because when we think about it, when we're under stress, our body isn't thinking about digesting our food. It's thinking about getting through that stressful situation. So all your blood flow will be taken away from your digestive tract. So what's great about gluten sensitivity that I've seen in many people, my clients, is as they reduce stress, as they start eating cleaner foods, as they start balancing out their lifestyle, doing those sorts of things, they actually can eat small amounts of gluten and not have the same reaction. So I really want to point that out. And that also comes into play with the ADD, the ADHD, all these depression, that sort of stuff, these emotional things that we're seeing connected with the gut. When you heal your gut, decrease stress, oftentimes people can start eating small amounts of clean foods that contain gluten and not have the problem. So I can't deny that I see a lot of people the connection between gluten and digestive problems. So I wanted to definitely point out that. Is there any questions on stress and food sensitivities? All right. I don't think there is. So to change gears a little bit, the other thing that I've noticed about going gluten-free is that you also can help with blood sugar balance, and that's really, really important, especially in this day and age. Because what happens when you go gluten-free is a lot of us are just decreasing the junk in our diets in general, because as we saw, gluten's in a lot of our processed foods. So when you take gluten out, you stop eating as many processed foods, and by limiting the amount of grains in your diet can overall help you control your blood sugar. And in this country, we have we have so many people that are diabetic and pre-diabetic. And it's crazy to me, and even children, and the obesity issues in children. So by limiting grains in general, whether they're gluten-free or gluten-containing, can really help in this specific area. So I wanted to mention that when you reduce grains and you reduce blood sugar spikes, that also can help you lose weight. And a lot of people get really excited about the weight loss piece of this. But I want to put this up really quick, because a lot of my people that come into me say, Tracy, I'm on a gluten-free diet and I'm not losing any weight, or I'm not feeling any better. Gluten-free does not mean healthy. I want everyone to repeat that to themselves. Gluten-free diet does not mean that it's necessarily healthy, because of what can happen is that we just replace all of our favorite gluten-containing treats with gluten-free treats, like cookies and pastas and candies and cakes and all this stuff with gluten-free flours, like rice flour, for example. But those types of carbohydrates still have the same impact on your blood sugar. So we still have the weight issues. So when I'm teaching people how to eat and balance their blood sugars, what I'm trying to do is also have them eat real food, and that's part of the key to going gluten-free and eating and losing weight and weight loss resistance. Because if you just replace all those carbohydrates with gluten-free products, you're not going to see the results that you're going to want to see, especially in the weight loss category. So just because, like I always say, just because it says organic doesn't mean it's healthy. There's organic junk food. Just because it's gluten-free does not mean it's healthy. It's not that you can't have gluten-free treats. For example, in my cookbook, I've got a lot of gluten-free treats, but they don't contain flour, because you have to remember, whether it's gluten-containing or gluten-free, those types of processed flours have a very dramatic impact on our blood sugars, and that can cause a lot of problems with weight loss resistance. So just to again, to put in your head, gluten-free doesn't always mean healthy. I've got some questions here that I wanted to see if there's any questions. Yeah, a lot of the stuff they're just saying has tons of ingredients and just junk in it, that again, just because it's gluten-free does not mean it's healthy. Let's see, how about gluten-free pretzels? Again, a lot of the gluten-free products, start reading the labels, you're going to see that they're full of a lot of preservatives because gluten gives it that elasticity to the products. And so gluten-free breads and gluten-free pretzels and gluten-free cookies and cakes and that sort of stuff have huge ingredient labels with a bunch of stuff that we don't know what it is. Even though it's gluten-free, I always am going to go back to, and I don't have this on the thing, I'll send this in the follow-up email for those of you who have not worked with me before, is that you want to make sure that you know what the ingredients are on the package, whether it's gluten-free or gluten-containing. So in a lot of gluten-free products, they use gums. This is another thing I want to point out. Gums and thickeners and additives, and a lot of my gluten-free clients that need to go gluten-free have digestive issues. And those gums and thickeners can cause actually more digestive problems. So really, really important that you're looking at your foods for not only gluten, but also just eating clean. And if you're already not eating clean, that might be the first step. That might be the first step to go with. So someone just said like xanthan gum. Exactly. And again, depending on where your digestive tract is, if you're having a lot of constipation, IBS, you might want to stay away from the gums and thickeners for a while, because think about that word. It's a gum. It's sticky. It's thick, and it can cause inflammation in the GI tract for some people. Let's see. I'm just looking at the questions here. Yeah, there's a lot of processed products people are just saying, just like the low-fat movement and things like that. And so what I want to point out is, people are asking, what about gluten-free bread, gluten-free this? For example, in my cookbook, I have treats, because I think that when we totally eliminate things from our diet, like treats, that we have, we're like little kids and we have temper tantrums and then we go overboard and we feel bad. So I think I call it the 80-20 rule. It's good to include products or treats in your diet so that you don't feel like you're on a diet in parentheses. And that's why in my cookbook I have things like the cocoa gems, and I do a lot of flourless things that taste great, are very satisfying, but are gluten-free. So all the recipes in my cookbook are gluten-free. And in just a second, I'm going to tell you, if you're interested in gluten-free, how you can get a discount, or my cookbook, my gluten-free cookbook, how you can purchase that for a discount. So I will be sharing that with you in just one second. But again, gluten-free doesn't always mean healthy. And sometimes before people can go down the gluten-free track, they need to start eating real food first. They need to start eating real food first. They need to start balancing their blood sugars. And then the gluten-free doesn't seem so overwhelming. A lot of people seem very overwhelmed with the thought of going gluten-free, so that might be a good way to start. Start with eating great grandmother foods, looking at your labels for ingredients in general, and then what you could maybe do is step into looking at gluten-free, because if you really want to see if gluten-free is going to help you feel better and help you with weight loss, you need to totally eliminate it from your diet for 3 weeks. And this is where it can get tricky for people. 3 weeks seems like a long time. But what happens is, if you're truly sensitive to it, it's going to take at least 3 weeks for your body to get rid of the immune response and start letting go of the inflammation. So what would happen if you were totally gluten-free for 2 weeks and then you went out to a restaurant, forgot to ask, didn't read your labels, ate some gluten, you have to start over. If you really want to test if this is going to help you. And I think testing is better than some of the blood testing and other things. It's just take it out and see how you feel. Like Dustin said, he took it out and he felt so much better. It's easier for me to maintain my weight. If I get into too many grains, whether gluten-free or gluten-containing, I can see my weight go up and down. So how do you feel? If some of my clients eat too much gluten, they get puffy. If they eat gluten, their constipation or IBS comes back. So you want to make sure that you're totally eliminating it, giving it that shot for 3 weeks. So if that feels overwhelming for you, you might want to step back and look at, are you eating real foods in general? Are you balancing your blood sugars? As Dustin mentioned, in just a second, I'll give you an opportunity to learn how to do that with a really great deal tonight. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions here quick before we do that. Does it ever take longer than 3 weeks for someone to feel the effects? Yes, it can. I mean, I really like to honestly give it a month, but if people can't, think over 2 weeks, but I've seen that most people will notice a difference of a total elimination in 3 weeks to a month unless they have a ton of damage done to their intestinal tract. It might take a little bit longer than that. But in general, I see that people can kind of definitely tell a difference between, by 3 weeks to a month. That's a great question. Okay. So any other questions in relationship to eliminating? So remember, in that follow-up email tomorrow, for all of you who are on the call tonight, I'm going to send you some handouts and some information that are going to help you with that, with doing that right. And I've had a couple of people ask in the question screen here, just quickly, if I want to learn more on how to balance blood sugars, I really appreciate your time here, but I wanted to give you a great offer tonight. And someone mentioned the cookbook, and someone also just asked, well, what about my kids? And what should I feed them for lunch? And that's what my cookbook is for. What I did is I'm going to send you a link to get $5 off my cookbook. My recipe collection is all gluten-free. Some of the menu suggestions will say this is not gluten-free because it'll use some other ideas, but all the recipes are gluten-free, and there's menu plans in the front of it that show you how to balance. So there's meal and snack ideas that come along with the recipe collection. So that's a great way to look at starting your gluten-free diet, is by using some of the recipes in that book. And again, like I said, I'm going to offer a $5 off special. Another thing is the DVD series. Now, I'm talking to you much more about gluten than I do directly addressing the DVD series, but what the DVD series allows you to do is actually learn how to eat real food in a balanced way. Because like I said, a lot of people that do gluten-free don't do it in a healthy way. They do a bunch of gluten-free junk food. And that can be very problematic at getting results. So you'll get a follow-up email. I also just put, I sent to you a link that you can use to purchase the DVD set at a special price tonight. And that's a great way to learn how to, from the comfort of your own home, how to eat better, how to cut your cravings, improve your mood, decrease inflammation, and get to eating a healthier gluten-free diet, because a lot of my stuff is tailored around that, because a lot of people want to lose weight. And I also have some options if you want to message me if you're interested in some individual sessions along with the DVD set. I've got a special seminar price that will go out, but only 5 of those available, and I can definitely talk to people about that on the free 20-minute consult. So I want you to take away tonight some really, really important thoughts about gluten. Is that just reducing it in people's diet by 50%, I've seen have dramatic results. So sometimes people don't have to go completely gluten-free to get the results that they're looking for. But a lot of people do, and I would just suggest that you think about doing that 3-week trial. And also, or maybe trying the einkorn flour is another way that you could make some of the recipes that you're used to, but switching to a flour that might be a little bit more digestible. So, okay, so I've got some questions here. Dustin, did you want to chime in with anything right now before I get into these the questions? I don't know if you're there still. Okay, so let me...
Yes, I unmute myself there, but yeah, I'll just kind of... Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
Tracy, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Cool. Yeah, great information, and I just wanted to encourage everyone that, if you're looking to make 2014 a better and healthier year than 2013 was, really becoming educated, doing the work is so important. And I don't know anybody better than Tracy to recommend to you. I've had probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 clients at least go through her 8-week program, and it's really transformed the way themselves and their family eats. And it's a great investment, so I really encourage you guys to at least pick that up, but take advantage of our other offers as well. And really investing in your education, your knowledge base is so important, and it can save you time, money, frustration, and can make you feel so much better. So I don't know, did you have that link for it tonight, or are we going to send it out?
Yeah, I did. I sent there's a link that you can click on that I sent out to everybody in the question screen. I put send to all, so I hopefully
Perfect.
people
Well, you
saw
guys
that.
should be able to get that link. You can sign up for it tonight. We'll ship those DVDs out to you right away. And I'll let from here, I'll let Tracy continue to answer questions and wrap things up. But again, thanks so much for taking time out of your lives. And if you're in the Midwest, stay warm and be safe.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. And I would love to stay on for a couple more minutes, and I've got some great questions in the question screen, and I don't want to leave anyone hanging with a bunch of unanswered questions. So again, before I get into the questions, I just want to thank everyone for their time and just really encourage you to take responsibility for your health this year. That is my big word that I'm going to kind of move forward with, is taking responsibility, because you're the only one that can do that. And by educating yourself on how to eat real foods and making those changes, if for yourself and your family, that's why I love my job, is because I get to see people transform their lives all the time by making better choices in their food. So I just want to encourage you guys to do that. And look for that follow-up email. Oh, just quickly here, before I answer the questions, there is I do have a couple follow-up events that, so first of all, you're going to receive an email tomorrow from me with the handouts, some resources. I'm going to answer some of your questions that I didn't get to, like the liquid aminos and that sort of stuff. So you have to confirm in order to get that information. So even if you're on my mailing list, still confirm. You're not going to get 50 newsletters. But if you confirm, you will receive that follow-up email with the PDFs and a bunch of information to help you think about going gluten-free. I also am doing a workshop this Thursday in Middleton. It's supposed to warm up, so I'm sure we'll have it. It's called Value Your Way to Better Health. It's a workshop on how finding and identifying your core values can actually help improve your health. We had 50 people come to the first seminar, and it was an awesome way to start out 2014 with setting intentional goals and figuring out what drives you to make your decisions. I'm having 2 grocery store tours coming up at Woodman's West if you're in the Madison area on January 14th and 21st. And Katie, you see her picture in the bottom there. Since I'm very pregnant and can't do a 2-hour grocery store tour, Katie is going to be leading that grocery store tour, and she, just like me, I have my master's degree in holistic nutrition, and she's just finished up her master's degree in holistic education, or nutrition education, and she's going to do a fantastic job at showing you real foods and some gluten-free options and what to look for in the grocery store. There's very limited amount of space in those, so make sure you check those out in the email that you receive tomorrow. So those are some ways that you can learn more. So I wanted to point this out. So let's see. So I'm going to get to the questions. Are probiotics good to take to help with cleaning out the gut before you do an elimination? Probiotics I'm a fan of in general, but probiotics, if you're sensitive to gluten, that's not going to be it. I mean, you're still eating something that's going to cause inflammation. So what I would recommend is actually I like Floragen 3. It's a local Wisconsin company. Floragen 3 is a great type of probiotic that you can pick up at a lot of local Wisconsin stores. You can order it online if you're not from Wisconsin. But that might not be enough, but that can be a great addition to trying to do an elimination. So it's a great question. Is gluten always listed on labels as gluten, or does it have other names it hides under? Great question. I love that question. It hides under so many different names. That's why, like modified food starch, the glucose syrup, all those examples are kind of hidden sources of gluten, artificial colors. So typically the product is not going to, it's not listed as gluten. It's going to be, say, wheat or spelt or rye or some of those other food additives you're going to see. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that if you're looking for a lot of the products nowadays, because this is becoming a thing, will say gluten-free on the package. But they don't always say gluten if it contains it. I had someone say, "Oh, thank you, Rhonda." She said, "I love your first cookbook. Are you coming out with a second?" It might happen in the future, but it's probably going to be a while with the baby coming, honestly. But I could talk to my assistant who helps me with all that stuff, and we probably almost have enough recipes to do a second cookbook. So that might be in the works, but it's probably going to be a while. Can you use einkorn flour like any other flour? Great question. Einkorn flour is actually a little bit more dense than some of the common wheat flours and doesn't have that glue and stickiness because it hasn't been modified. So I would recommend sticking with einkorn flour recipes. There's a lot of great websites out there that have recipes for einkorn flour. Even on my blog, I've made some einkorn flour recipes that are pretty stellar. So I would stick with recipes, and often you have to sift it to get a little bit finer texture. It's a little more dense, but for it can work well in a lot of it can work well with a lot of other recipes once you kind of get the hang of using it. But it does have a little bit different quality to it. So that's a great question. Patty had a question or a comment about working with me personally. Patty, if you could email me, I would love to talk to you about working together personally, or I can actually write down here. You already have my DVD set. So if you have my DVD set and are interested in some more personal consultations, let's set up a free 20-minute consult to see what we could work out, especially before the baby comes very soon. So I've got you written down, Patty, so hopefully we can follow up. I'll find your email. Question, does the DVD series and manual give you a lot more information in your recipe collection? More ideas on food? Absolutely. The recipe collection is just a cookbook with some meal plans and snack ideas, which is very helpful to some, but the DVD set is all the background information on proteins, carbs, fats, how to balance your blood sugars, how your thyroid works. That's kind of really the nitty-gritty of all my information is in the manual and DVD set. So that's a great question. And if you'd like to order the DVD set, I'm going to be sending that link out right away tomorrow. If you didn't receive it on the chat screen, I will get that link out to you ASAP. So you can get that great deal in DVD set. What kind of gluten-free flour is the best? The one thing I'm going to say about gluten-free flour, remember it has that dramatic impact on your blood sugar. Just like any other grain, so you have to be careful and use it in small amounts, especially if you have weight loss goals. There are some gluten-free flour, especially if they're mixes. I use coconut flour in some of my products because it has less of an impact on your blood sugar. Excuse me, in some of my recipes, I use a lot of coconut flour. The other flours that you can look at using, there's some mixes that don't have gums and additives in it, but since I don't bake a lot with the flours, I don't have a specific one that I can think of. I think Bob's Red Mill has one that might be free of gums and thickeners and other additives. Oh, thank you. Oh, just some. I just appreciate some nice words for tonight's presentation I have here. And the cost of the workshop, great question. For Thursday night, the cost of the workshop is $25. It's a 2-hour workshop, and the grocery store tours are also $25. But there's definitely limited seating in both. So make sure you check those out. So you'll be receiving the PDFs in the follow-up email that I will be sending out tomorrow. So just make sure that you confirm, and that email will come through, and you'll get the PDFs of the handouts that I was showing to you, both on the einkorn flour, and the gluten. You know, where do you find it, that sort of thing. The workshop is in Middleton, Wisconsin. It's in the basement of the Park Bake building across from Costco. All the details will be sent out in that email tomorrow of where that can be found. Do I work with people with celiac? Yes, I do work with people with celiac. That's another great question. Even though this was more geared towards people that have the gluten intolerance, I do have clients that have celiac disease. So I will make sure I get that link out. Do I still have group sessions? Group sessions will not be reconvening until after baby. I'm due February 5th, so probably I'll think about having one this summer if I can get enough interest, but otherwise next fall we'll probably be looking at having the group sessions again, and that in the group sessions you also get the DVD set. But timing with baby this year didn't allow me to have one at the beginning. Yeah, webinars regularly. I'm going to start doing some more webinars. I have a Nutrition 101 webinar. If you're just interested in my basic nutrition information, next week scheduled, and that'll be in the follow-up email. But I'm going to be taking some time off with baby coming up for, you know, the February, March, April-ish. But I'll be back. I'll be back. Very informative. Okay. Great. I'm glad. It looks like people are, a question here. Are you able to do all your shopping at one place, such as Woodman's? Do you have to go to multiple grocery stores? I typically go to about 2 grocery stores in the Madison area. I shop at Woodman's and Willie Street Co-op. A lot of my clients just go to Woodman's. I also go to the farmer's market, but you don't have to go to 50 million grocery stores to eat gluten-free or to eat healthy. It just depends. And on my grocery store tours, I give out a sheet that in the Madison area will tell you, you know, kind of what stores have the best prices. So if people are price conscious, that sheet can really help you make best decisions if you want to go to one store, say once a month, to stock up on certain products. Any alternatives to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? I know this whole gluten-free thing in sandwiches. I mean, there are gluten-free breads and options. They just don't typically taste very good if you're looking for an actual sandwich. What you're going to see in my cookbook is I have a lot of, you know, if you're going to have some sort of, like I have roll-ups. I know this isn't peanut butter and jelly necessarily. If you want a replacement that's gluten-free for peanut butter and jelly, you're probably just going to have to find some gluten-free bread that's as clean as possible. So I don't have an amazing answer for you there, but a lot of my stuff, I try to get my carbohydrates from things other than grains, especially for weight loss. So I'll have, you know, my main protein, or like a ham roll-up recipe, for example, I have on my blog. I have some ideas in my cookbook where I'll take like a chicken salad, and instead of eating it on bread, I'll have, you know, fruits and vegetables or other things alongside it to help balance it instead of grains. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Let's see. What is hydrolyzed gelatin, and where can I find it? I'm going to hold that question, Cindy, for just a second. Someone asked, well, let's see. Gluten-free rice cakes are good with peanut butter and jelly. Yes, you can find that stuff. Can you talk about sourdough? That's another great question. Sourdough, it does have gluten in it, but the fermentation process of sourdough is helps reduce the gluten content, and for people it can help with digestibility. So I do recommend sourdough for my people that aren't gluten sensitive in small amounts if they really want bread, because of that fermentation process. It does make it easier to digest. For example, if you let it go too long, it reduces the gluten content so much that it doesn't even rise. So that's a great question. So there are, on the grocery store tour and the grocery list that I give out, there are some foods that you can have that are gluten-free, that are, like, there's gluten-free crackers that are clean. There's gluten-free breads. Katie will be showing some of this on the tour that are a little bit better. But when I always come back to weight loss goals, you have to be careful of how much grains you're having in order to reach those goals. So I just want to point that out. But there are things like rice cakes that are clean. You just have to remember that they're high in carbohydrate and they can really impact your blood sugar. There's some crackers that I have on the list that are clean, but in general, you just have to be careful with what you're consuming as far as carbohydrates. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna answer the gelatin questions in a second. Okay, so. Okay, so gelatin, and this is a whole, I'm going to be doing a Nutrition 101 talk next Thursday night, like I mentioned, a webinar. I'm going to put that up on my blog. It's going to be complimentary, so free of charge, and I'll talk a lot about gelatin. But gelatin is a type of protein that is gluten-free, and it's a type of protein that you can add to your diet that's very inflammatory. So for a lot of my clients that have inflammation, adding gelatin to their diet can be very, very helpful. It doesn't taste like anything, and it doesn't change the texture. They do have it at Woodman's now, but without going into my whole spiel about it, if you can check out the webinar next week, I'm going to go in depth and show you visuals. I don't have visuals here, and that really helps when I'm trying to talk about gelatin. So let's see. Okay. For weight loss, are there limits you recommend on grains? Is there a certain amount that you should stick with to weekly, and how do you figure this out? I would say, honestly, if you're looking for weight loss goals, having one or less servings of grains, whether they're gluten-free or gluten-containing, per day is good for most people for weight loss. The DVDs and manual and stuff go into how to figure out your own balance equation and how that was going to work best for you. It is different for everybody. But for a majority of my clients, just to keep the answer simple, if you try to shoot for one or less grains a day, that works best for weight loss. I had a question before, what's the difference between gluten-free and paleo? Paleo diets are going to look at being mostly grain-free in general. And I've got thoughts on paleo. What I teach isn't necessarily paleo, but it's literally low grain, what a great-grandmother ate. Like Dustin said, he does dairy. I do dairy if we can find dairy that you can digest. But what I don't want people to do is when you go grain-free, that's where the DVDs and stuff can help you out, is you don't want to go too low carb. Because if you go too low carb, you can throw off your blood sugars and have just as many problems. Not necessarily with the stuff we're talking about tonight, but with blood sugar dysregulation. So make sure you're using fruits and vegetables in replace of your grains, and some of the clean treats that I have in my cookbook can also give you some ideas. So make sure that Nutrition 101 will also help you if you haven't heard that information before, figure out some of that stuff. Okay, so hopefully, let's see. Okay, so I answered that. Can you explain what the grocery store tour is? So basically, what Katie's going to be doing, and she's been on my tours before, and she's going to be giving the handouts that I typically give in my tours. Is she's going to show you what all the real foods are, or what I call green light foods, foods that have been around for 100 years. So she's going to take you around Woodman's and show you what foods fall into that category, so that when you're shopping, you know exactly what to be purchasing. So it's not to overwhelm you, but you're going to be shocked when you start seeing the food, the stuff that's in most of our processed foods. If I follow the great-grandmother rule, was it around 100 years ago, and do you know what the ingredients are? There's actually very few foods in the grocery store that fall into those categories. So Katie's going to be showing you what those products are and where to find them, so it should make grocery shopping a lot easier for you. That's what the grocery store tour is. It's fantastic. I have so many people going, they love it. I've been diagnosed with prediabetes. Are you ever going to do a blood sugar class? Should I have any grains? Great question. Well, really, the DVDs and even my Nutrition 101 is all about balancing your blood sugars. You have to be really careful with grains if you've been diagnosed with um, pre-diabetes because of what they can do as far as spiking your blood sugar. So if you're going to have a grain, you want to make sure you have it with a protein and a healthy fat to prevent the spike from causing too many blood sugar problems. It's not that you can't have any, but I often suggest to my pre-diabetic clients to have lower amounts of grains. But I always balance it with a protein and fat. So great question. Okay, how do we sign up for the grocery store tour? Should we just show up? Great question, Katie. You can't just show up. There's a limited amount of people, so I will send you that link, or you can go onto my website right now, and you can sign up for the grocery store tour. Right on my events is Tracy Fountain, like a waterfountain.com. And actually, I'll put up this next screen, and you can go to that website right there, sign up for the grocery store tours. There's 2 dates. There's only 10 spots per grocery store tour, and Katie's going to do an awesome job at showing you what foods to buy. Great question. Make sure you sign up, though, because it is limited because we can't have too many people in order to get through it all and answer questions. All right. Well, I've been talking a lot, but there's still quite a few people on, so I just want to make sure that I can stay on for a few more minutes. If we've got any more questions, I can answer those. But otherwise, please look for that follow-up email. Should hopefully get it out to you right away in the morning. I just really appreciate your time, and we'll try to send you a bunch of information that will help you think about going gluten-free. Where do you confirm for the follow-up email PDF? Well, what's going to happen is you are going to get, it'll just say, it's giving me permission to send you an email. So all you have to do is press the confirmation button, and then you'll just get that email right away after that. So that's how that will work. So you'll get the email. Is flax gluten-free? How do you get most of your fiber? That's a great question. Yes, flax is gluten-free. The whole fiber talk would be another hour about kind of the misinformation out there about fiber in general. So I honestly can't answer that, but I can answer that flax seeds gluten-free, but you do have to be careful with flax and consuming too much of it because it has a potential estrogenic effect. So I have a lot of clients with digestive issues coming off this, and nuts and seeds can sometimes make it worse. So I'm sorry, but that's a really short answer to a tricky question. So thanks everybody for coming tonight. Please email me if you have specific questions. Please, if you can attend the Nutrition 101 webinar, it'll be a similar format to this next week. I'll get all that information in the follow-up email out tomorrow. And thank you for your time, and I apologize for the few technical difficulties we had with my screen. But I hope everyone stays warm and really thinks about trying to do gluten-free to see if it'll make you feel better. So thanks, everybody. Take care.